Well, hello. My name is Angel Wood, and this is Crime of the Truest Kind. Season's greetings. My name is Angel Wood, yes. This is Crime of the Truest Kind, Massachusetts and New England true crime stories, regional history, advocacy-focused podcast. It's not a comedy podcast, but we do manage to get some laughs from time to time. Thank you for being here. I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about the challenges that I have faced over the last 3 or 4 weeks. Well, if I'm being honest, it's more than that. I will say this. I'm getting my shit together. Thank you to all supporters of the show, like Michelle, who has dropped a tip in the jar. All my valued Patreon patrons, including Lisa McColgan, my esteemed executive producer, you superstar, you. Support the show. Drop a tip in the jar, become a patron, share it with your friends, tell somebody about it, post about it on social media, tag me, I will share it. Let's see, what do I need to tell you about before we get started? Oh, I announced the live show Saturday, January 25 at Koto in Lowell, Massachusetts. We are going to Crime Valley, Crimes of the Merrimack Valley, where I live and have lived for a lot of years now. Go to crimeofthetruestkind.com and you will see all of the information. What I am doing this time around, I am selling advance tickets through my Venmo. Why? Because the venue doesn't sell pre-sale tickets. And I did not want to use some lame ticketing platform, which oftentimes is more of a headache than it's worth. If you have a Merrimack Valley case that you would like me to know about or talk about at the show, send me a message. Email me, crimeofthetruestkind@gmail.com. You can send me a DM on the socials at crimeofthetruestkind. This is episode 76. We return to Maine, Northern Maine. I have planned to revisit the Attiin Shaw case from Washburn, Maine. And then I spoke to Kara, who has been advocating for Attiin here in the States, and, well, it took a new direction. We are on to episode 76, Gone Missing in Northern Maine. They simply vanished. People say it doesn't happen until it does. That true crime trope. They were a happy family until they weren't. It was that small kind of town where nobody locked their doors until the unthinkable happened. Real Dateline NBC shit. I have certainly learned a lot in this regard, and I continue to. In 2025, I will become a certified victims advocate. What does that mean? It means I continue to learn. We will build our Massachusetts Advocacy Coalition. And we will reach out to Massachusetts families of missing and murdered loved ones. Our goal with this is to have an impact on how families are treated, how they are supported, and what other things we can offer to help ease this truly awful happening in their lives. If you are a Gen X kid like me, you were taught to stop, drop, and roll, don't do drugs, stranger danger, that we could expect to bake a reasonably edible cake in a chunk of plastic with a light bulb. We were terrified of the Bermuda Triangle and quicksand and razor blades in our candy and spontaneous combustion, mixing Coca-Cola and Pop Rocks. The boogeyman was a concern. Milk carton kids. Only some of those are urban myths. Kids disappearing? How is that possible? Did they spontaneously combust? We lived a carefree, latchkey life. But people go missing. And when they do, families are lost, confused, and often left to fend for themselves. In too many cases, parents and caregivers of children who have disappeared get, "Oh, they just ran away," despite those people trying to convey to them, sometimes to deaf ears, that they know their child didn't run away. Now, it's true. This has changed over time, but it was scary growing up. In the 70s and 80s, things were very different. Science and technology has continued to grow, connecting cases and ultimately helping to solve them. In the 1990s, we saw the creation of CODIS, the Combined DNA Index System, the national database of DNA profiles that law enforcement uses to link crimes and identify suspects. The FBI established and funds CODIS. It was a much better way for law enforcement agencies to communicate. They used the Forensic Index that contains DNA profiles from crime scenes, the Offender Index, which contains the DNA profiles from convicted offenders and arrestees, and the Missing Persons DNA database, which helps identify missing people and those who have gone unidentified. CODIS allows local, state, and federal forensic laboratories to electronically exchange and compare DNA profiles. It has the ability to link unknown DNA from crime scenes to offenders. It has helped solve over 500,000 investigations. CODIS is instrumental in solving murders. DNA profiles from crime scenes and victims have been matched with DNA profiles of offenders. Crime scene DNA that is gathered at the crime scene, is entered there to see if anyone has been arrested or convicted of another crime. Here's where I should insert a disclaimer. We're gonna get a little sciencey. We're not gonna spend a lot of time on this. Sometimes even the simplest stuff goes over my head. It's not the entire genome. It's about 20 markers called STRs. Short tandem repeat DNA markers, which are specific regions of the genome that repeat a short sequence. Without analyzing the entire genome, it looks at specific, highly variable parts of the DNA, not the whole genome sequence. You dig? It gets limited genetic information. CODIS does not provide any information about an individual's overall genetic makeup. There's no information about medical conditions or physical traits. They don't tell you any health info or genetic risks or the color of the skin or eyes. Ancestry, 23andMe, they tell you all of those sorts of things. And we have witnessed the rise of investigative genetic genealogy. Taking center stage in 2018 is the case of the infamous serial rapist and murderer known as the Golden State Killer. This case was cracked, and as a result, it led to helping solve many other mysteries. In the wake of the Golden State Killer case, this science has been used by law enforcement in hundreds of cold cases, generating leads, making dozens of arrests, multiple convictions, and exonerations. This encouraged investigators of some really tough cases to take this sciencey stuff seriously. It also caused a backlash when, in 2019, we learned that FamilyTreeDNA had allowed the FBI access to its services. Both GEDmatch and FamilyTreeDNA subsequently modified their policies to limit access, and users needed to submit for law enforcement use. The opt-in. I recently submitted my own DNA. I spit in the tube. It's far less unpleasant than I once thought, but word to the wise, don't drop the tube on your shirt at a Mass State Police event. I looked like I spit up on myself. These services have protocols. Some genealogy sites are more private than others. Police cannot access direct-to-consumer DNA testing databases, like Ancestry and 23andMe. Ancestry does not voluntarily cooperate with law enforcement and requires all government agencies seeking access to Ancestry customers' data to follow valid legal processes and does not allow law enforcement to use Ancestry services to investigate crimes or to identify human remains. 23andMe resists requests from law enforcement. 23andMe will only comply with a valid court order, subpoena, or search warrant for genetic or personal information. 23andMe says they have never released customer information in response to a government request. GEDmatch, or FamilyTreeDNA, are 2 players in the genealogy game that are open source. They don't require a court order to access the data. Both were free and user source for folks from ancestry buffs to people searching for long-lost relatives before the inception of investigative genetic genealogy. Civilians who had their DNA analyzed by private companies were able to make their genetic profiles public by uploading them to FamilyTreeDNA or GEDmatch, broadening their search for their relatives. This is where I want to say directly to families of missing and murdered loved ones. Labs run the DNA of unidentified and unclaimed people. This is helping to connect missing people with their families and to find killers in our midst. So to reiterate, if you have a missing or murdered loved one and your DNA is in 23andMe or Ancestry, it's not enough. You have to opt in and you have to upload it to GEDmatch. This part sounds more confusing than it is. I met someone from GEDmatch and we had a great conversation. But if your DNA is just in Ancestry, you need to take it one step further. Genetic genealogy is giving people their identities back. The Bear Brook Murders are a big story in New Hampshire and New England. In 2019, 3 of the 4 victims of Bear Brook were identified through information provided by relatives, DNA testing, genealogy research, and a librarian by day named Rebecca Heath. She did a deep dive and followed her dreams on nights and weekends. The victims of the Bear Brook Murders were found on 2 separate occasions in barrels in Allenstown, New Hampshire, in 1985 and 2000. They were 24-year-olds Marlise Elizabeth Honeychurch, sometimes McWaters, and 3 young girls, 6-year-old Marie Elizabeth Vaughn, 1-year-old Sarah Lynn McWaters, both daughters of Honeychurch. The 4th little girl is said to be between 2 and 4 years old, and she is the biological daughter of the man believed to have killed them. Investigators have said that the 4 were killed by Terry Peter Rasmussen, who was known as Bob Evans during his time in New Hampshire. That suggests to me that something bad happened to the mother of that little one. The little one they are working to ID as I say this to you. Heath's research included finding a post on Ancestry.com from 1999. It was about Sarah Lynn McWaters. Rebecca Heath discovered Marlise had an older daughter with her first husband and had married a man with the last name Rasmussen. A serial murderer with countless aliases, he died in 2010 in prison for the murder of Yunsun Jun, a woman who he met and reportedly married, though not legally, in California. It's a story that entails bags and bags and bags, well, truckloads really, of kitty litter. He was also the last person known to be with missing woman Denise Bowden, who was last seen by her family on Thanksgiving Day, November 26, 1981. According to her family, Denise, her infant daughter, and her boyfriend, Bob Evans, in quotes, spent Thanksgiving at her family's home in Goffstown, New Hampshire. When her family went to pay Denise a visit at her apartment on the 900 block of Hayward Street in Manchester, Denise, her 6-month-old daughter Dawn, and that man they only knew as Bob Evans were gone. That baby was found and is safe. But Bob Evans was in the Manchester area when 14-year-old Lorene Ron went missing on April 27, 1980. She lived on Merrimack Street, 2 blocks away. As did Denise Denault, who disappeared 6 weeks after Lorene. The 2 looked very similar to one another, despite an 11-year age difference. Denise Denault, previously Denise Lavoie, was 25 when she disappeared on June 8, 1980. She was the mother of 2 young sons and had split with her husband when she disappeared, leaving a club in downtown Manchester around closing time. Denise Denault lived on the 300 block of Hayward Street in Manchester, a few doors down, 3 maybe, from Bob Evans. We can only speculate that their disappearances are connected. Nothing good happens when that guy is around. The Bear Brook story is absolutely fascinating, and I get requests to cover it, and it has been done extraordinarily in the Bear Brook podcast, produced by New Hampshire Public Radio. Do listen. Provincetown's Lady of the Dunes was the Commonwealth's longest unsolved murder. Her remains, found in the dunes of the Cape, were buried in St. Peter's Cemetery, marked only with unidentified female body found on Race Point Dunes, July 26, 1974. She would be exhumed 3 times, 1980, 2000, and again in 2013. Each attempt to identify her was fruitless. Back in 1974, state police had thrown away any physical evidence from the scene, including her clothing and the blanket she was found on. Ruth Marie Terry, 37 years old of Tennessee, was given her identity back. On October 31st, 2022, agents from the FBI's Boston field office announced she had been officially identified thanks to investigative genealogy. Massachusetts State Police officially closed the case after identifying her killer in August 2023. Terry's husband, Guy Rockwell Moldovan, who died in Salinas, California in 2002, is believed to be her murderer. Episode 35 is Ruth Marie Terry. Go listen. Advancements in DNA technology are changing the way we look at unsolved crimes. Family members of missing and murdered loved ones, please submit DNA. Be in the system. Your loved one may be out there waiting for you, and you may hold the key to connecting other families with their missing person or solving a murder. I am not being dramatic or saying that for effect. It is 100% true. True crime podcasts talk all about missing and murdered people. It's very important to share this information. It's one of the services that we can provide as people that do this. And if we call ourselves advocates, we need to provide information that better arms families who find themselves in these positions. On December 2nd of this year, the FBI and the Maine State Police announced a $15,000 reward in the disappearance of Stefanie Damron, a missing 13-year-old girl from New Sweden. She has been missing now for 2 months. Stefanie was reported missing on September 24th, 2024. She was last seen the afternoon before walking out of her house on West Road and into the woods. Stefanie comes from a big family. There's 6 altogether. She falls right in the middle. Austin, somewhere in their early 20s. There's Star, Stefanie, Natty, Mo, and Bo. Stefanie turned 14 in October, and she wasn't with her family to celebrate. New Sweden is a small town north of Caribou, near the Canadian border. The town's population in 2020, 577 people. Stefanie's family, who relocated to rural Maine, were living off the grid. Based on some posts I've read from Stefanie's father, that's exactly the way they wanted it. They lived in what's called a yurt-type structure. And I don't know if you've Googled those lately. They're kind of nice. They got land, they set it way off the road, and they powered by generator. I'm not here to judge, and I know people who would love to live like that. I don't know how big a yurt is. My question, did everybody fit in it? There was another person living there with them, someone they thought of as a grandpa, but not believed to be related to them. And then Uncle Andrew, an uncle figure since they moved to Maine. And I believe all the kids who were of school age were homeschooled. Immediately upon receiving word of this missing 13-year-old girl in rural Maine, the FBI sent their Child Abduction Rapid Deployment Team, CARD, a team of special agents specifically trained in missing children's cases. Extensive searching began. Grid searches utilizing canines by the Maine Warden Service and Maine State Police. But after all of this very hard work searching, Stefanie is still missing. Investigators have also conducted dozens of interviews and followed up on potential leads in Maine, across the country, and in Canada. How does a 13-year-old little girl just vanish into the woods? The FBI's CARD team will continue to assist Maine State Police with on-the-ground investigative, technical, behavioral analysis, and analytical support. The public is being asked to play an active role in helping find Stefanie by reviewing her updated missing persons poster and sharing it on social media. Stefanie is listed on the FBI's website. Anyone with information should immediately call the Maine State Police or the FBI or submit a tip online at tips.fbi.gov. Every bit of this information I am sharing with you will be listed among the sources at Crime of the Truest Kind on the episode page. The case I really want to revisit, the case has been on my mind, is the case I learned about when I hosted one of my live shows, and Brandie from Evaporate the Missing shared Attiin's case. When we did an episode on Attiin's case earlier this year, there wasn't much to go on, and admittedly I didn't know as much about her case as I do now. The public at large hadn't even heard of her. All these months later, there's not a lot of progress, at least not public-facing. Though there are people who are working diligently to share her story, like Brandie and Kara. Kara is a woman who's been advocating for her here in the States since she learned of Attiin's case. And many of us have become members of the group on Facebook called Where is Attiin Shaw? It operates solely to raise awareness and gather information about Attiin's case. As it goes with most missing persons cases, there's often little information about the events that led up to the disappearance. Family is dumbfounded and scared, racked with guilt. If they knew then what they know now, how different this would all be. In cases of missing people, though, we don't have the luxury of foresight. Let's go back over the details of her case, Attiin's story. Attiin's case, like too many other women's stories we have heard, is frustrating. A woman who came to the U.S., but with her American husband and her 4 boys. She goes missing and her family is thousands of miles away in Indonesia with little information and no control. They have no one to advocate for them. Their families are far away. Attiin's case remains a mystery. Where did she go? What does her husband know and her children? Did they see or hear anything? I'm good at math, so my powers of deduction indicate she was born in 1988 in Biak, a small island on Papua, Indonesia, with beaches and caves and waterfalls and villages and coral reefs popular for tourism. The Republic of Indonesia, located in Southeast Asia and Oceania between the Indian and Pacific Oceans. There are more than 17,000 islands. Great salad dressing. It is the 4th most populous nation in the world after China, India, and the U.S. In 2024, they have a population of, are you ready for this? 279,798,000. About 87% of the population is Muslim, approximately 10% Christian, Protestant, Roman Catholic, and about 3% Buddhist, Hindu, and more. Indonesia is beautiful. It does take a long time to get there. A full day to get there. A full day to get home. It's lush and green. With an island climate, it is known for a substantial reptile population, including crocs and snakes and Komodo dragons. They even have their own island. Indonesia is in the top 5 for total number of reptile species by country. Maybe you've heard the nightmare-fueled stories of people going missing that have been snatched up by crocs and snakes. Earlier this year, a missing Indonesian mother was found inside a 16-foot-long python after being swallowed whole. I know that's gross, I'm sorry. Indonesians, they export a lot of shark products. Fins, skin, meat, 200 of the more than 1,200 shark species that exist found in the waters around Indonesia. It is a beautiful country. It is safe. Though crime has increased over the last few years, you always get grifters in tourist spots, pickpockets, snatch and grabbers. It is Attiin's home. She had worked at Aratel Arian, a hotel in a resort area on the island. It was her place of employment from 2009 to 2011. It is no longer open. It was during that time she met Michael Patrick Shaw, an American, who taught math and science at the international school. Michael Shaw is much older than Attiin. The Michael Patrick Shaw in Washburn, Maine is 58, 22 years her senior. Math. Following the timeline on her blog, they met in December of 2010. Although she writes on one post, we first met in December 2011 and dated for a few months and engaged and married fast. They got married on March 23, 2011 and honeymooned in Bali. They lived in a place called Tembagapura. Attiin called her new husband a real mature guy, full of responsibilities. He's a good teacher and husband, and a great papa for my son, Zakia. Her son was very little when they got married, 2 years old. He was born January 30th, 2009 in Biak. Her second son, their first together, Zorian John Shaw, was born October 23rd, 2012 in Singapore. This is according to her Facebook page. 2 more boys joined the family. In May 2014, Zulfikar Jeffrey Shaw arrives. Zain Michael Shaw, the 4th son, he arrives a little later. We know they lived in Indonesia, Singapore, and Myanmar, likely for teaching jobs. Her blog entries end with a post on their first Valentine's Day, 2012, where she talks about how quickly they met and got married. Love at first sight, she called it. On her Facebook page, you can see the growing family. She posts photos of their many adventures. Her Twitter feed is mostly Foursquare check-ins. In one, she's getting her son a passport. In 2020, the Shaw family moved to the States, settling in Washburn, Maine. But Attiin's family had little contact with her following this move. Shortly before her disappearance, she told her sister she wanted to find a job. She was last seen reportedly September 2021, but not reported missing until the end of 2021 to the Washburn police. Maine State Police became involved in early 2023. More than a year passed. Attiin Rashmawati Shaw was 33 when she was last seen at her home in Washburn, Maine on September 8, 2021. This is according to the report given to Washburn PD in November, a month after she disappeared. The only person with this information is her husband, Michael P. Shaw, with whom Attiin lived with their 4 sons. For Attiin, someone who never left Indonesia before she got married, that had to be a culture shock. It's unclear why they chose Maine. There was no connection to the region from what I was able to find out. Probably work, cost of living, that's a driver. Kara, her online advocate, said that Mike Shaw had gotten a job in Limestone. Don't know which came first, whether it was the move to Maine, then he got the job. Whatever the case, he was there under 1 year. In an article published in the Indonesian Lantern in February 2024, it's a publication for Indonesians in the U.S., Attiin's family gives their account of their communication with Attiin's husband, Mike Shaw. What was revealed was a surprise to everyone. In this article, translated in English, Attiin last spoke with her sister Anita in August 2021. Attiin's father, Sulistyo Wyodo, reached out to his son-in-law on WhatsApp. Mike Shaw told him Attiin wasn't home when he returned from running errands on September 8, 2021. He wrote that the night before, Attiin packed her clothes in a suitcase. I should add here that the article said Attiin packed his clothes in the English translation. All references to Attiin are he. And there are a number of instances throughout the translated piece that don't quite make sense. The timing on the WhatsApp conversations between Attiin's family and her husband are also unclear. The year 2023 is listed in reference to her family trying to get information from Mike Shaw. That cannot be accurate. It has to be 2022. There's no way her family would have waited a full year to try to contact him. They were desperate to find her. Her sister Anita last had that communication with Attiin in August 2021, and we know her communication back home was less and less after she moved to the U.S. But her parents continued to try to communicate with the only person connected to their daughter. They had no one else to tell them anything about where she may be. Her parents contacted local police to request a missing persons report, but they refused the request because the report belonged to the U.S. Attorney General, her father said. I don't quite understand what that means. They wanted to know how a victim's parents could get information. Attiin's father said the police responded with, "All the missing data has been recorded in the police computer system. This means that the data will appear in every location. If the victim's name appears and matches the description, we will be notified." I imagine this led to suspicion on their part. They tried unsuccessfully to get any explanation about Attiin's whereabouts. Attien's dad contacted the Indonesian consulate in New York, whose jurisdiction includes the New England states. He wanted to know whether Attiin had applied for any travel documents. This, too, was largely unsuccessful, as the Indonesian consulate general stated that the information and data are highly confidential and cannot be disclosed because they must comply with the policies of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And that was the end of the line for Attien's family. What we are able to glean from the various coverage of Attien's disappearance: Attiin wanted to work. She told her sister that she'd had a job cleaning empty houses, but that was boring, quite frankly. She had a brief turn at a Bangor pizza place, Angelo's Pizza. I found one at 499 Hammond Street in Bangor, but she reportedly only worked there a few days because of legal documents. I guess they didn't talk about that before she started the job. Her husband told her family Attiin was living alone at the time, supposedly in a rented apartment. But is that true? Did he make that up? It seems odd, given that it is 2.5 hours away from Washburn, and she worked at the pizza place for a couple of days. Keep in mind, her employment record ends when they get married in 2011, though she did have a salon that is not listed on her LinkedIn. It also says on her LinkedIn she was in Singapore at the time. It's entirely possible that Attiin was restless in her new rural living situation. She had reached out to find something to do, even joining a Zumba class. It feels a lot like she wanted to work outside of the home for a break and some autonomy that maybe she used to do at the salon. Can we assume her husband did not agree with that? Now that she was in America and away from her family and anything she knew, it was very isolating. In late 2021, shortly before she went missing, Attiin started that Zumba class. She bought a 10-session membership. That was Kara who found out this information, and she shared it with the police. In her husband's WhatsApp communications, he mentions he strongly suspects an affair. There are other odd things. There is no information that validates anything he said in that correspondence. There is no evidence of any affair or her having a secret relationship with anyone, that she was keeping her 4 kids secret from a non-existent boyfriend, or that she was on dating sites, or that she probably now had a secret baby with her secret boyfriend. Yes, that is also part of this communication. Red flag of vilification of his missing wife. Not awesome. In an NBC News story from March 2024, her cousin, Zadia, speaks about Attiin and managing bipolar disorder that led to angry outbursts, and how that was difficult for her to navigate. Now, I don't know what her diagnosis was, or if she was being treated. This does come up in her husband's correspondence with her family, that she would take off to spare her kids her angry outbursts. But she'd never leave for too long. She had also done this at home in Indonesia. I am also concerned about postpartum. Attiin having 4 children over just a handful of years. I cannot say one way or the other if this is the case. I have no evidence or information, but I'm concerned about her well-being. Attiin owned a salon in Indonesia. She was very proud to have her own business. She liked her independence. In 2019, the Shaw family, with all 4 boys now, left Indonesia after Mike's contract ended. I told you there was a time in Singapore when she listed one of her children was born there, but I didn't find much else about that. A friend named Beth told Dateline that Attiin was nervous to leave her country and everything she had ever known. Dateline reached out to the Maine State Police to request an interview with an officer familiar with Attien's case. Public Information Officer Shannon Moss responded with a press release. The Maine State Police continues to investigate the disappearance of 36-year-old Attiin Shaw of Washburn, it said. Attiin was last known to be living with her husband and 4 children in Washburn in late 2021. Attiin was reported missing to the Washburn Police Department near the end of 2021, and the state police became involved in early 2023. That's it. Dateline also reached out to the Washburn Police Department to learn about the initial search efforts for Attiin, but was referred back to the Maine State Police as the current investigative agency. Now this is interesting. In a report from July 2024 by News Center Maine, Washburn police joined a growing list of Maine police departments forced to close for staffing shortages. They took a vote and the townspeople said close it down. This comes after an officer who investigated Attiin's disappearance back in 2021 and closed her case, only for it to be reopened by Maine State Police in 2023. That officer was arrested in another missing persons case. The disappearance of Erik Foote. Bangor Daily News reported that a former Washburn police sergeant was arrested in connection with the disappearance of a Washburn man who'd gone missing in January. Chandler Cole, 54, was arrested by the Aroostook County Sheriff's Office on March 29, 2024, and charged with aggravated forgery, tampering with public records or information, falsifying physical evidence, and unsworn falsification, according to court records. This is directly related to the case of Erik Foote, the missing 39-year-old Army veteran who had gone missing on January 30th, 2024. Officer Cole was the last one to see Erik Foote. Washburn police opened an investigation into his disappearance when potential discrepancies were noted in Cole's reporting. They brought a private investigator in and put Cole on administrative leave with pay. That investigator was Darrell Crandall, who heads up the Florida-based Edgewater Reliance. He also happens to be a former Aroostook County sheriff, serving 35 years in law enforcement. Officer Cole did not cooperate with the investigation. In February, when he was asked to speak to the investigator, he refused. He resigned a few days later. The investigation indicated that Cole lied when Erik Foote's father contacted him about his son. Cole's report states that he had dropped Erik at the Presque Isle Freshies. They have a chain of stores in Maine. But he told Erik Foote's father, Alan, that he brought him to the A.R. Golds Memorial Hospital. It used to be called the Aroostook Medical Center. There was no hospital record to support this claim. And that is what we call a motherfucking red flag. The investigation details that Officer Cole altered his police reports to show that he had taken Erik to the hospital. It became clear to them that there had been criminal conduct, and they requested a warrant for Cole's arrest on those charges. Erik Foote's mother, Brenda, said she last saw her son for lunch and shopping on January 29th. He was reported missing the next day. 3 months would pass until Erik was recovered near the Aroostook River in Caribou. It was April 23rd. A page on the Disabled American Veterans, DAV's fundraising site, started by his family, tells Erik's story. On the day he went missing, he was in a severe mental health crisis, suffering from PTSD and depression. He was walking along a road in 15-degree Maine weather without a proper coat, and he was visibly upset. The numerous motorists who saw him called 911 and reported him hysterical, in distress, underclothed, without shoes or boots on his feet, and displaying signs of mental health issues. The police officer that responded told his family that they had dropped him off at a hospital because Erik told him he was depressed and needed to talk to someone. But that was a lie. Based on his word, the family drove for hours searching for him. It was later discovered that the officer dropped him off at a convenience store many miles from his home, without transportation or proper clothing, and without medical attention. He later falsified his report to support his lies and his failure to help our son. We learned later that the same officer had an early morning encounter the same day with our son, who was in severe crisis in -2-degree weather, and he did nothing to help him. Now, despite all of this, the medical examiner could not determine a cause of death, and Erik Foote's family sought help from another medical examiner. According to the county news, they have asked Maine's new medical examiner, retired U.S. Air Force Colonel Alice Briones, to review the autopsy. Now, given that information, did Erik Foote somehow get to Caribou from Presque Isle, a difference of about 13 miles? And due to the temps and his state of mind, did he succumb to the elements? In a written statement from WMTW Channel 8, his family said this: "If we don't start changing the way we treat people and how we think about them, and help our military members, veterans, citizens, and neighbors that are struggling with mental health issues, that are crying out for help, then we fail as a community, as a country, and as Americans. Chandler Cole was due in courts in September. Then it was moved to October. I have no information on the status of this case. It was likely continued to 2025. And I anticipate the family of Erik Foote could file a civil suit. Time will tell. Now, a teen was reported missing to Washburn police in late 2021 by her husband, who waited quite a while to do so, over a month. I saw a document from Washburn police reviewing 2021 reports, and under missing persons, 0. 888 Washburn Road. Michael Patrick Shaw has stayed in Maine with his 4 boys and was living at 888 Washburn when the Maine State Police Crimes Unit searched the home twice. I don't have any solid information on where he's working now. In October 2021, after a teen vanished, he got a job at Gill Sanitation, a trash removal service. He left that job in December 2021, citing his wife left him with his kids for his reason for quitting the job. Somehow, her husband's story that she just left has been taken as the whole story. Officer Chandler Cole got the case and closed it with no further investigation. Kara said he made comments on a post stating there was nothing suspicious about her disappearance. I don't have that post, but I'll take Kara's word for it. Washburn PD reportedly reopened her case in 2023 and found no proof of her working on a cruise ship, no evidence of her having moved anywhere, or that she was working anywhere else. On February 13th, 2024, Maine Major Crimes Evidence Response technicians showed up with detectives and Maine State Police troopers to search 888 Washburn Road, the 3-bedroom, 1.5 bathroom, 1,036 square foot home on almost 5 acres of land. A small house for a family of 6. But look, I don't know what they were dealing with financially. People make things work. Investigators spent 2 days there, and we don't know what they may have found. And then in June, Major Crimes was back on the scene. Shannon Moss, Public Information Officer for the Maine Department of Public Safety, said law enforcement was there to follow up from their last search. We don't know any more than that. Mike Shaw told their 4 boys that a teen was working on a cruise ship. Was that a logical response to a man worried and how he might explain his wife's absence? Was it to calm them a bit? Possibly. But it didn't end with the young boys. Her passport had expired. All social media activity ceased. No credit cards, nothing connected to a teen was found. No alternate address, no aliases. Given the lack of information about their daughter, her family contacted an attorney in the States who suggested they hire a private investigator. Hiring an attorney and someone who can support an investigation is something I have been told by other advocates is helpful for a family in a situation like this. Get an attorney for sure. I know it's not feasible for everyone experiencing a loved one, and there are more and more organizations to support families in this way. Also, share your family's DNA. Sometime in 2023, a teen's father died of a stomach problem, a condition that had been worsening over time, with no help from grief over his missing daughter. It's reported that this happened as he was leading the morning prayer. What is especially telling, after all of this, is when her father died, no one heard from Attiin. Deeply concerning. A man identifying himself as Attiin's brother-in-law, Jeff, from New Jersey, posted in Attiin's Facebook group that Attiin calls him her big brother. He shared how he was extremely concerned about her. If she is alive, I know she must be locked up in a dungeon somewhere because she would never completely cut off all communication with her children in Maine or her family and friends in Indonesia. He said he was glad her case was getting attention and mentioned that no one associated with that Facebook group had contacted him. He does a little finger pointing to a crime show that had talked about Attiin's story earlier in the year. This brother-in-law said he provided the Maine State Police some information. He talked about her Facebook page and that her name was on his list of active Facebook contacts, which, as far as he could tell, indicates which among his friends were currently active. To that I say, if that's true, someone is accessing her page. He went on to say that a friend of Attiin's from Bangor tried to contact his mother on Facebook. This person was asking about Attiin because they hadn't heard from her in a while, and asked if his mother knew anything about where she was. It was either late 2022 or early 2023. But Jeff Shaw's mother didn't respond. She's also Mike Shaw's mother. He went on to list things that he had heard about Attiin. She had an apartment in Bangor. She had been active on one or more dating websites. She went horseback riding with friends on the day that her husband last saw her. We have evidence of none of this. Nothing to go on. But brother-in-law claims to have told all of this to the police. What Jeff Shaw has failed to mention is why his brother, Mike Shaw, has done nothing to help search for his wife. So where are we in the case of Attiin Shaw? Hoping to get more information, hoping the Maine State Police major crimes don't stop looking, hoping they've been in contact with Attiin's family in Indonesia, hoping that they ask them for DNA to submit to the U.S. database. This is the message I will send to them through Kara and anyone with knowledge of her case. Attiin R. Shaw is still missing. Last seen September 8th, 2021 in Washburn, Maine. If you or anyone has information, overheard something, saw anything, heard from Attiin, her husband, her family members, her brother-in-law, if you worked with her in Bangor or was in a Zumba class with her, please reach out. We need your information. Attiin Rushmawati Shaw is listed on NamUs. She is listed on the Missing People in America database. I've posted several photos on the episodes page at crimeofthetruestkind.com with all of the links that I have talked about, with the many sources that I have read in Attiin's case. She's been missing for 3 years. That is a long time in the life of a child, and she has 4 of them. To the family of Erik Foote, that should have never happened. I'm so sorry. To Attiin's family, we're still looking. We're still going to help try to find her. And to the family of Stefanie Damron, we're going to keep looking for her too. Stefanie Damron has been missing for 2 months. There is a vigil being held for Stefanie on Saturday, December 21st at 1 p.m. at the New Sweden First Baptist Church, 17 Westmoreland Road, New Sweden, Maine. All of this information will be posted at crimeofthetruestkind.com. Stefanie's page is Help Find Stefanie Damron. Her name is spelled Stefanie, Damron, Damron. She's 14 years old, and she's been gone for 2 months. NamUs lists 149 missing persons cases in the state of Maine. Those are the people who have been entered into the system. Civilians cannot enter missing persons into the database. It has to be done by law enforcement. Thank you for listening. My name is Angel Wood. This is Crime of the Truest Kind. Massachusetts and New England crime stories in regional history and advocacy. Trying to help out where we can. That's what it's about. And tell these stories. Follow the show at Crime of the Truest Kind. We're everywhere. Facebook, Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky. Still on Twitter. Twitter, I'll always call it Twitter. YouTube, TikTok, Patreon. Next live show Saturday, January 25th at Coteau in Lowell, Massachusetts. We will talk about Merrimack Valley crime cases, Crime Valley, and we'll do a live Q&A to follow. You can reach out anytime with information about any of these cases that I have talked about, any questions you may have, questions about cases I've already talked about. Email crimeofthetruestkind@gmail.com. Season's greetings, friends. Of course I'll be back before the end of the year. I'm gonna go now. Lock your goddamn doors.